with 97.9 The Box.
And I'm Jadarius Smith, and today we are here to reminisce the 1920s.
Let's go out to Steve Smith to tell us about the Harlem Renaissance.
Thanks, Mike. The 1920s was a revolutionary time period for African American culture and 1920s music. The Harlem Renaissance took place in New York, and it happened right after World War I. And this was known as a rebirth of African American culture. And during this time period, jazz and blues were very popular. And I have right here Louis Armstrong's guitar that he gave to our station. And I wish I could play it for you, but I can't play the guitar. Whites became more attracted to African American culture because of their music. And so the Harlem Renaissance helped out African Americans gain equality and fight for civil rights. Influential people during this time period were Zora Hurston and Louis Armstrong. Well, thank you for listening, and now back to you, Mike and Jay.
Wow. Thanks, Steve.
Now to Rahina with 1920s fashion.
Howdy guys, I'm here to talk to you about the 1920s fashion era, in my opinion, the most stylish era. Women are now starting to break traditional values and wear more loose dresses and colorful dresses that are way above the ankle. They're wearing tons of makeup and their hair is being short and slicked back with what they call a bob cut. They now call themselves flappers too, which is also a social trend. Men, on the other hand, stick to the more somewhat traditional with their suits, but more of a sporty look nowadays. The lower class men stick to dull colors and suits made of cotton, while the upper and middle class stick to lavish suits and vibrant colors made of silk. Now back to you, Jadarius and Mike. Maybe one day y'all can learn from these fashion trends.
Truly amazing, Rahina. Great work.
Thank you. Now to Michael Jackson for automobile and its effects on the environment. Thanks, Mike. Henry Ford made the first American-made car. He would pay his workers an average of about $5 an hour, compared to the $3, and everyone wanted to work for Ford. He really bragged about his productivity in his assembly line. He created a lot of jobs, not only for building cars, but building gas stations, building roads, working at the gas stations. He revolutionized the way that America was built, the maps that America had. As so, he reshaped the landscape with all the highways and roads and everything that created. Cars really, they also changed the way that houses were made, because now garages were made. Paved roads allowed for the cars that lived in the suburbs. They could travel to the cities now. And back to you, Mike. Thank you, Mike.
Now on to Jadarius Smith to talk about 1920 sports.
Thank you, Jadarius. Sports in the 1920s has had a massive eruption of interest. Babe Ruth, a baseball player for the New York Yankees known for his home runs, and Lou Gehrig, his teammate, will be facing the Boston Red Sox on prime time at Yankee Stadium. While Jim Thorpe, a football player, baseball player, and basketball player, and an All-American, got voted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and has named the first person ever entered into the Football Hall of Fame. Bobby Jones won his 11th golf championship today, while his 10 others came before the 1920s. Newt Rockne, a Notre Dame head coach, brought Notre Dame to the national championship, and they beat out Miami. And Joe Louis won the heavyweight title for boxing today, becoming the heavyweight championship of the world and a hero among the other countries in the world. And back to you, Jadarius.
Thank you, Jadarius. Amazing work. Like, the work you put in, tremendous.
All right, back to Steve to tell us about some commies.
Thanks, Jadarius. Alright, I'm here to talk about the first Red Scare that happened in the 1920s. So the first Red Scare was a hysteria that feared communist views, and America was afraid of communists because in Russia, communists took over Russia and they murdered the royal family and they took over that country. So America feared that the communists would do the same to our country. And so because of the Red Scare, labor unions that had strikes because they were fighting for equal pay, they were seen as left-wing, and it was also known as a conspiracy against the government if you were part of labor unions. So a lot of people involved in labor unions were either arrested or they were harassed by their citizens and peers. And furthermore, a big event that happened during the Red Scare was a group of radicals. They mailed bombs to influential people around America. And one of the people they mailed the bombs to was the Attorney General, and the bomb went off when he opened it and he was dead. And he died. And so President Woodrow Wilson launched a raid, and they captured 4,000 radicals who were they were found to be involved in the bombings. And so because of this, President Woodrow Wilson and his staff, they deported over 200 immigrants that came from Russia. Thanks for watching. I hope you noticed that I'm decked out in communist colors with my communist box. Alright, and now back to Jadarius.
Thanks, Stevie.
Now back to Rahina for organized crime and prohibition.
Howdy guys, I'm here to talk to you about the Prohibition of the 1920s and the gangsters of the 1920s. Prohibition began in 1920 when the 18th Amendment took effect and banned all sales of alcohol throughout the United States. But people started to build speakeasies and illegal bars where they could go and consume and buy alcohol. But it ended up being pointless because the 18th Amendment was soon taken away. The American Mafia, an organized crime network, had stations all throughout the United States, but Chicago and New York were their main parts because the liquor trade was very successful there. After Prohibition, drugs and gambling became their main source of crime for the American Mafia. People like Al Capone, Machine Gun Kelly, and Pretty Boy Floyd led the charge, and people started to follow in their footsteps. Right here, I have real weapons from Al Capone himself. He used these to kill many people. And here is a bottle of vodka that Al Capone actually smuggled in himself. It was his real and first bottle he ever sold. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Rahina.
All right, and this is Michael Jackson. Sending off to Michael Jackson about the entertainment and music of the 1920s. Thanks, guys. All right, now it's time to tell you about the 1920s entertainment and music. The hat that I am currently wearing is something that would have been worn in one of the silent films of the era. And in front of me is a radio. Radios were a huge revolution for just families in general during the 1920s. It allowed them to bring them together. They would sit together and listen to major news stations like NBC and CBS, or even just listen to music if they wanted to. Steamboat Willie also came out, which was the first cartoon made. It starred Mickey Mouse. Public dance clubs. That's where you get wild with your amigos. And then they were huge on parties back in the 20s, all year ago. they would just booze it up, you know? All right, thank you. Back to you, Mike and Jay. Thanks, Mikey.
Now back to Jadarius Smith, who's going to be hitting you with President of the 1920s.
Thank you, Jadarius. Today, I will be telling you about presidents during the 1920s. Warren Harding has won the presidency to become the first president to serve during the 1920s. He's going to pass an act called the Ford D. McCumber Tariff Act, which is going to place a tax on goods coming from foreign countries. I am also going to predict that Calvin Coolidge is going to beat out Warren Harding for the second election in the 1920s, and he will become the second president to serve during the 1920s. I also believe he is going to have a heavy respect towards businessmen, and he is going to help them in the business industry. The third president that I believe will serve in the 1920s is going to be Herbert Hoover, and I think he will beat Coolidge out and become the third president to serve. The reason why is because his belief in individualism and his respect towards all people in the United States. Those are my predictions for the presidency in the 1920s and why I think they're going to be great. Back to y'all in the studio.
Thank you, Jadarius.
Thank you for watching the 97.9 The Box.
I hope y'all enjoyed.
Love you.